Okay guys, here's a quick tutorial on how to do your project on sequences and series using Spreadsheet. In this case I'm going to be using Google Sheets. You could use Excel. The basic steps are more or less the same. So I'm going to start off doing an arithmetic sequence, and my cell here up at the top, which is A1, I'm going to type an N in here. Okay. I'm going to click over into cell B1 and I'm going to type in my U of N formula, which for this one, U of N is going to be equal to 3N minus 1. Okay? Now I'm going to go into, click into cell A2 and I'm going to start putting in the numbers that I'm using for N, which are the positive integers starting with 1. So I'm going to click 1, enter, 2, enter, 3, enter. And I could continue to do this, but there's a better way. I'm going to click into this cell here and highlight these three. And notice I see this little box in the corner, and when I carefully put the cursor on there, it changes into a plus sign. I'm going to click on the mouse and pull down, and what's going to happen here, it's going to fill in those numbers for me. Okay? So there's the positive integers starting from 1 and ending at 30, and we'll just go with that. Now, in this column, I'm going to create the values that we get for the arithmetic sequence when we plug these numbers in, these N numbers in. So, to do that, I have to create a formula, and in Spreadsheets, you always start off creating a formula with an equal sign. Okay, so I type in equals, then I'm going to type in 3 times, which is shift 8, and now comes my N number. Well, my N numbers are in this column, so I'm going to click this column, and that shows up as an A2, which is what I want. Okay, and now I'm going to go minus 1, enter. And so what that did was it inputted this positive 1 for N, did 3 times N minus 1 and got a value of 2. Okay? So again, there's the formula sitting right up here, 3 times A2 minus 1. Now, I want the spreadsheet to do that for this whole column of numbers. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, again, move my cursor right into this corner point, click and pull down, and that did all the calculations for me. In this cell, it plugged in 2 for N, computed it, and got an answer of 5. In this cell here, it plugged in 3, did the arithmetic, and got 8. And it did that for every number up until 30. Okay? So hopefully that makes sense. This is my arithmetic sequence right here, these numbers, 2, 5, 8, 11, 14, 17, and so on. I want to do a little graph of that. All right? So let me show you how that works. I'm going to click into this cell here with the N in it, hold my mouse button down, move over, and notice how the B above that formula got sort of highlighted. So I'm going to hold my mouse down and pull down, and I'm highlighting. It's a little bit hard to see, but all of the cells in these two columns that have values in them. Once I get that, perfect, just like it is, I go to Insert, and I jump down to where it says Chart. And it's doing a chart for me, but it's not really the kind of chart that I'm looking for. This is called a column chart. I don't really like that. So underneath this little area here, I'm going to click this down arrow and scroll down until I see scatter. This is what I want. Okay? That is a scatter points, individual points for all of my arithmetic series numbers. All right? So I click this X to get rid of that thing, and I'm going to click in the chart, and once it's highlighted in blue like we see here, that allows me to move it over and to make it a little bit smaller. Okay? And I'm going to move it over here. Yeah. All right? Because I want to do 2 more columns. All right, let me jump back to this and move this thing up. There we go. All right, I'm going to do 2 more columns and calculate some sums. So this column for C is basically just going to be the n numbers again. So I could type those in if I wanted to, but let me show you something else. If I click on this A right here where my arrow is, okay, so the A is darkly highlighted and all these numbers are kind of highlighted. Once I see this little down arrow appear, I'm going to go to copy. Okay? So it copied basically everything in that column. Now I'm clicking on column C and I'm going to do click, paste. Okay? So my n numbers have just been copied into column C. Now in column D I'm going to do a little sum. Alright? So I'm going to start adding the numbers that we get from this sequence, basically creating the arithmetic series. So I'm going to title that SN, and I'm going to hit enter. And my first number that I got in my sequence was the number 2. So I'm going to type in a 2 here. Okay? Now, my next number for the sum comes from when I add 2 plus 5 together, the first 2 numbers of the sequence. So I want to do that with a formula. So I'm going to type in equals. I'm going to click in to where my 2 is, and I'm going to type plus. And now the 5 is in this cell right here, which is the B3 cell. So I'm going to click where the 5 is located and hit enter. And notice it did. It added this to my starting value plus 5 and got 7. Okay? And I want it to do that for every number that we have here. So in order to do that, I'm going to click back here. This is where I entered my formula to create the 7. I'm going to grab my corner box and pull down, and magically we get all of the sums. We have just created now the arithmetic series values. When I add 2 plus 5 plus 8 plus 14, those are the values that we get for that. Okay? So let's make a chart, a graph of what that looks like. So I'm going to go and highlight those and pull down so that I get those 2 columns, the C and D columns. Insert, chart, change that from column to scatter. Okay? Get that out of there. Let's make this a bit smaller and pull that over. And there we have it. There is our arithmetic sequence graph. Pretty linear, pretty straight line, clearly. There's our arithmetic series graph, which is definitely not a linear graph. Okay? Now, I still want to build my geometric series and sequence. So I'm going to do that by creating another sheet in this workbook. So to do that, I'm going to go down to the bottom here, and I'm going to click this plus sign that says Add Sheet, and I get a new sheet appear. Notice Sheet 1 is down here, and it's still there. Sheet 2 now is where I'm going to build my geometric series. So same steps that I did with arithmetic, except I have a different formula. Starting off with n, clicking into this column for u of n, and for this one I'm going to have the formula 3 times 1/2 raised to the n minus 1 power. That will be geometric, okay? So to raise to a power, you have to use a special key called the exponent key, which we get from the Shift 6. It looks like that. And I'm going to type in parentheses n minus 1, close. Okay? So that's my n numbers. That's my formula. I'm going to go ahead and do my n values here. Oops. Well, that wasn't good. All right, let me try that again. That's n. That's 1. That's 2. That's 3. That looks better. Click and highlight those 3 numbers so that we can pull this down and fill it in all the way. Okay? So I went down to 34. That's probably going to be pretty good. Okay? I'm going to type in the equals because I'm creating a formula now. And my formula is 3 times Shift 8. I'm going to go parentheses 1/2, close, Shift 6 for the caret key. Okay? And now I'm going to do my n plus 1. I have to open a parentheses first. Now, remember, n is these numbers in this column that will change. So I'm going to click in for my first n value right here. Okay? That A2, which will plug in a 1 for me here. But now I subtract 1 and close parentheses. Okay? I hit enter, and there's the first value in that sequence, 3. Okay? If I click in the corner and pull down, this is going to give me that entire geometric sequence numbers. Okay? 3, 1.5, 0.75. That is a geometric sequence. The common ratio is 1/2. Okay? And that's what the numbers, that's what the values would look like. All right? Now, you're going to want to make a chart, a graph of those numbers. You should know how to do that from earlier in the video. Let's quickly do the sum. All right? So I want to click here, copy this column, go to column C, and paste. Come on. There we go. Paste. Okay? Now, my sum values will go here, so I call that S of n. My first sum is just the number 3, so I enter a 3. My next sum will be 3 plus the next value in the sequence, which is 1.5. We do that using a formula, so I click equals, I click the cell with the 3 in it, plus the cell with the 1.5 in it, and I hit enter. And I believe that's correct. 3 plus 1.5 would be 4.5. All right? To do that for the entire sequence, I click that cell, click in the arrow or the corner of the cell there, and pull down, and there you go. Okay? And I hope that looking at these sum values, you notice something that we talked about with a geometric series when you have the numbers approach infinity. So hopefully what's happening in this column makes sense to you guys. All right? Now, quickly a couple more things and then this video will be done because I'm almost out of time. I don't want these sheets to say sheet 1 and sheet 2. I want to give them names. So I'm going to click in here and click this down arrow and say rename, and let's call that arithmetic. Okay? And the same thing in sheet 2, click that, rename, and that's geometric. All right? To make these look a little better, we can highlight all of these, maybe make the font size a little bit bigger. We can put the borders around them like this, okay? And maybe if we wanted to, make these bold, you know. Don't forget to put in your charts, your graphs in here. And I think I'm pretty much done. I hope this was helpful. If you guys have questions, you can ask me in class. But there you go. There's your video for geometric and arithmetic sequences and series using a spreadsheet. Thanks. See ya.